Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
Cremated human bone. That's what scientists found sealed inside a 2,000-year-old bronze object that Rome never documented, never explained, and systematically tried to erase from history. In 2025, researchers finally cracked the mystery of the Roman dodecahedron, and the answer was impossible, because the object wasn't Roman at all. It predates Rome's invasion of Britain by 150 years, and what they found inside suggests it was built to communicate with the dead. The impossible silence. Here's something that should bother you. The Romans documented everything: military manuals detailing formations and tactics, tax records tracking every denarius across the empire, recipes for fish sauce, bathroom graffiti mocking politicians, shopping lists scratched into pottery by bored merchants. We know what gladiators bet on between fights. We know what soldiers ate for breakfast in Britannia. We have love letters, divorce proceedings, complaints about noisy neighbors, and yet they never once mentioned this object. The dodecahedron is a hollow bronze sphere with 12 pentagonal faces. Each face has a circular hole punched through it.
If you look through the hole on one side, whatever the other side you're looking through is a different diameter hole.
No two holes are the same size, even on the same object. At every corner sits a small rounded knob, carefully soldered with precision that rivals modern manufacturing techniques. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The geometric accuracy is remarkable. But the purpose, nobody knew. For 200 years, the greatest archaeological minds in Europe couldn't figure it out.
What you're looking at in this image is one of the most unexplained mysteries of the ancient world.
But here's the catch. Archaeologists have found just over 130 confirmed specimens. That's it. 130 objects across 4 centuries of Roman occupation, spanning half a continent. Rome mass-produced everything else. Coins by the millions, pottery by the ton, weapons, tools, jewelry, household goods, religious statues, all churned out in industrial quantities across the empire's vast workshop network. Yet barely 130 of these dodecahedra exist. And get this, every single one was found in the outer provinces: Britain, Gaul, Germania, the cold, rainy, rebellious edges of empire where Rome's control was always tenuous and local traditions never fully died. Not one has ever been recovered from Rome itself. Not one from Italy. Not one from the Eastern Mediterranean where Roman culture flourished for centuries. Not one from anywhere near the imperial heartland. For an empire obsessed with standardization and cultural uniformity, that geographic silence is impossible to ignore. Romans spread their culture everywhere they conquered. Their coins, their gods, their architectural styles, their language. But somehow, this object stayed confined to the northwestern frontier, as if it belonged to that cold, misty landscape and refused to leave. What most people don't realize is the silence goes even deeper.
There is still a huge amount of mystery around these very peculiar objects. But one of the most popular theories is that it had a more mystical function.
Thousands of Roman reliefs survive today, showing tools, rituals, daily life in exhaustive carved detail. Merchants at work, soldiers on march, priests making offerings, children playing games, but not a single image anywhere depicts a dodecahedron. No carving, no fresco, no mosaic, no mention in any surviving text from an empire that documented everything from military campaigns to the proper way to fold a toga. Someone didn't just forget these objects, someone erased them. And the reason why would remain hidden until researchers finally looked inside one. What they found would make veteran scientists ask their assistants to leave the room. Every theory collapsed. For 2 centuries, brilliant minds threw everything at this mystery. Sophisticated theories backed by prestigious institutions.
We don't know who created these dodecahedrons or how they were even created, but it doesn't look like it would have been easy given ancient technology.
Clever explanations that seemed to finally solve the puzzle. All of them failed. Candlestick holders. That was the first theory, proposed in the 1800s when dodecahedra started appearing in European collections. Clean and simple, also completely wrong. No wax residue on any specimen, no scorch marks from flames, no soot buildup, not on a single one of 130 objects. Military, rangefinders came next. This theory had serious academic weight behind it. Soldiers supposedly aligned the holes to estimate battlefield distances, using the varying apertures like a primitive optical instrument. Sounds technical enough to be plausible, right? Wrong. The holes vary wildly in size, with no consistent pattern, no calibration marks, no carrying cases to protect such a precision instrument. And here's the deal. Not one dodecahedron has ever been found near military equipment. Not one. In over a century of excavation at Roman forts, camps, and battlefields across 3 countries, the knitting gauge theory went viral online in recent years. Those varying holes supposedly helped craftspeople wind yarn to make different-sized gloves and mittens. The internet loved it. Finally, a sensible explanation that ordinary people could understand. But Roman knitting didn't work that way. The techniques of the period didn't require circular gauges. More damning, the metallurgy needed to. Cast these precise bronze objects far exceeds anything required for textile work. You don't need geometric perfection and expensive alloys to make winter mittens. And the killing blow? No wool fibers have ever been found inside any specimen. Not a single strand across 130 objects spanning 4 centuries of supposed use. Every mainstream explanation collapsed under scrutiny. Too fragile for weapons, too complex for toys, too inconsistent for measurement, too precious for mundane crafts. And yet someone invested serious resources making them. Bronze required technical skill and specialized knowledge. Valuable tin imported from distant mines. Careful casting techniques passed down through generations. Someone cared deeply about creating these objects with geometric precision. It's not that simple, though. For 200 years, academia had nothing. No answers, no framework, no explanation that survived contact with the physical evidence.
I don't think it's a tool because I don't find wear on the necks of the knobs.
Okay.
I don't find wear on the edges of the holes. I think they are something symbolic.
Just a bronze puzzle that defied every theory thrown at it. Then came Norton Disney, and the discovery that made one archaeologist go completely silent in the middle of a crowded excavation site. The discovery that changed everything, summer 2023, a quiet English village with an unusual name. Norton Disney, Lincolnshire, rolling green fields, stone walls, the kind of place where nothing happens for centuries. Volunteers were conducting a routine archaeological dig, carefully excavating what geophysical surveys suggested might be a Roman-era settlement. Trowels scraping soil, brushes clearing debris. Tedious, methodical work. Dr. Richard Holt, a 20-year veteran of Romano-British excavations, was overseeing soil removal in a grid square that had shown promising readings. Just another day in the field. Then, a volunteer's trowel hit metal. The sound cut through the afternoon air like a bell. Holt walked over, knelt down in the dirt, and stopped breathing. When I saw what was emerging, he later told colleagues, his voice still unsteady weeks. Afterward, everyone just stopped. The entire field went silent. 20 people frozen in place. I'd never seen a dodecahedron in person, only photographs in journals and museum catalogs. But here's the catch. Unlike specimens yanked randomly from fields by amateur metal detectorists with no context, this one was excavated scientifically, layer by layer, photographed at every stage, soil samples taken, everything documented meticulously, what archaeologists call a sealed context. That changed everything. They could date the burial precisely. They could see exactly what surrounded it. For the first time in 200 years of discovery, researchers could understand the circumstances under which a dodecahedron was deliberately placed in the ground. The object wasn't dropped accidentally, wasn't lost carelessly. It was deliberately buried alongside 3rd century coins, pottery fragments, and iron tools. Post-hole outlines in the surrounding soil suggested a villa or workshop structure once stood nearby. This wasn't careless loss. This was intentional concealment. Someone buried this object on purpose, carefully, deliberately, and never came back for it. And get this. When Holt lifted it into the afternoon sunlight, his hands were shaking visibly. The bronze was pristine, mirror-like patina. No corrosion, despite nearly 2,000 years underground. soldered knobs perfectly intact. Then he noticed something else that made the hair on his arms stand up. The geometry cast pentagonal shadows that layered atop each other, shifting as he turned it, dancing across the soil, almost alive. It looked designed to react to light. One team member whispered into the field recorder, not wanting to break the strange silence. Not accidentally, deliberately, like it was built to do this. If you want to keep uncovering secrets that mainstream archaeology won't touch, hit that subscribe button now, because what researchers found sealed inside this object will change everything you know about ancient Europe. The Impossible Truth, early 2025. A joint research paper leaked online before official publication. Within hours, the archaeological world fractured into camps. Dr. Elena Richter's team at the University of Cologne had spent months analyzing the Norton Disney Dodecahedron alongside museum specimens from across Europe, using metallurgical techniques unavailable to previous generations, pushing the limits of spectrometric analysis. When the final results came back, Richter sat motionless at her desk for a full minute. The numbers on her screen couldn't be right. She ran the analysis again, same results. Then she picked up the phone and called her department head. It was 11 p.m. "We need to talk," she said, "and you're going to want to sit down." The dodecahedron wasn't Roman. Here's the deal. Metallurgical testing revealed a bronze alloy matching pre-Roman Celtic production methods. The specific combination of copper, tin, and trace elements didn't match Roman. Standardized bronze at all. The chemical signature pointed somewhere else entirely. The object dated to at least 150 years before Roman occupation of Britain, before the legions ever crossed the Channel, before Julius Caesar's expeditions, before Rome had any sustained contact with the British Isles whatsoever.
What's strange about them is that there is no record of what they were used for, and it's still quite a puzzle and a mystery to historians what function they actually served.
This single finding destroyed every mainstream theory overnight. If the dodecahedron predated Roman conquest by over a century, it couldn't be a Roman tool, couldn't be a surveyor's instrument, couldn't be a military device, couldn't be any imperial artifact whatsoever. Rome didn't create these objects. Rome found them, encountered them in the foggy forests of Gaul and Britain, and systematically tried to make them disappear from history. But what researchers discovered next made Richter's metallurgical bombshell look routine. The bone inside. Dr. Marcus Webb handled the next phase of analysis. Oxford's lead radiochemical analyst, 30 years examining artifacts from civilizations across the ancient world. Egyptian canopic jars, Viking burial goods, Mesopotamian ritual vessels. He thought he'd seen everything death could leave behind in bronze and bone and ash. When the spectrometry results appeared on his screen, Webb asked his assistant to leave the room. Then he closed the door. Then he sat down heavily in his chair and stared at the numbers for a very long time. Deep within the hollow chamber, where no contamination from handling should ever reach, his team found microscopic traces of calcium phosphate, fused with amber resin at high temperatures, mixed with rendered animal fat. These specific combinations appear in one context across the ancient world: funerary practices, death rituals, what historical sources describe as necromantic rites in Iron Age Europe, the chemistry of communicating with the dead. But here's the catch. That wasn't what made Webb go pale. The residue contained a distinct isotope signature that his equipment identified immediately: cremated human bone. Someone had burned human remains inside this object, not near it, not beside it, inside the hollow chamber, sealed within the bronze. "I've seen human remains in artifacts before," Webb told colleagues afterward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Funerary urns, burial goods, reliquaries, but never sealed inside something this deliberately constructed, this carefully engineered." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. This wasn't contamination, this was an accident. Another pause. This was the purpose. What most people don't realize is what this discovery truly means. The dodecahedron wasn't a tool, wasn't a toy, wasn't a measuring device, or a candle holder, or a knitting gauge. It was a vessel for the dead. And the rituals it enabled would explain why Rome wanted every trace erased from the historical record. Communicating with the dead. Some researchers privately floated a theory that most academic journals won't touch. A theory that sounds like dark fantasy until you examine the physical evidence. What if the dodecahedron wasn't just used to honor the dead? What if it was specifically designed to communicate with them?
The dodecahedron was meant to represent the heavens, that the dodecahedron was itself a mirror of the shape of the universe.
Here's the deal. Celtic spiritual traditions, preserved in fragments and oral histories, describe geometric bronze objects used in death rites, objects with multiple apertures that channeled light in specific sacred patterns, objects that held burnt offerings of herbs and animal fat, objects that contain the physical essence of the deceased. The Druids and their predecessors believed certain geometric shapes could bridge worlds. That light passing through sacred geometry at specific times created pathways between the realm of the living and whatever lay beyond. That cremated remains, properly housed in the right vessel, maintained an active connection to departed spirits. The dodecahedron matches these fragmentary descriptions almost exactly. The varying hole sizes that defeated every practical explanation, they create different light patterns throughout the day as the sun moves across the sky. The shadows shift, move, breathe almost, like something alive inside the bronze. The burnt offerings sealed within, lavender for peace, thyme for courage, pine resin for purification. Plants associated with death rituals across ancient Europe. Plants burned to mask the smell of cremation. Plants burned to guide spirits to their final rest. And the cremated bone of a specific person, the departed themselves, sealed inside forever, present for consultation, available for communion. Scientists at the University of Ghent tested precise replica dodecahedra in direct sunlight. The holes didn't cast random shadows. They projected circular beams moving in symmetrical patterns across whatever surface lay beneath. During equinox testing, when day and night stand perfectly balanced, the shadows formed near-perfect pentagonal outlines that rotated slowly throughout the day. And get this, Oxford's radiochemical lab analyzed 5 authentic museum specimens. 3 contained burnt organic matter, carbon particles from high-temperature burning, oxidized copper salts, animal blood proteins. Botanical residues included lavender, thyme, and pine resin, the exact plants associated with Celtic funerary practices. This wasn't contamination from centuries of handling. This was deliberate ritual burning inside the object itself. The dodecahedron was a sacred vessel for ceremonies involving fire, scent, smoke, and the physical remains of the dead. And Rome understood exactly what it was. That's why they tried to destroy every trace. The Forbidden Manuscript, late 2024. Dr. Isabel Morrow, a paleographer specializing in medieval Latin, was examining forgotten manuscripts in Swiss monastic archives, documents copied by monks across centuries who preserved ancient texts without always understanding what they contained. One document made her stop cold in the middle of a quiet afternoon, cataloged only as CEX134, titled Mysterium Dolor, a 12th century manuscript copied from unknown older sources, most of it mundane, but one phrase jumped off the yellowed page: Orbis Divinorum, the divine sphere. The passage described 12 faces pierced and crowned, handled by the whispering ones of the forest, used to hear the voices of the stone sleepers. Morrow's hands started trembling. She'd spent 15 years studying medieval manuscripts. She'd never seen anything like this description. High-resolution UV imaging revealed a full paragraph that had faded beyond normal visibility over the centuries. When she read the enhanced text, she sat down hard in her chair. The ancient words described a bronze object with 12 perforated sides and rounded protrusions at each vertex, a clear and unmistakable match for the dodecahedron, written centuries after Rome fell, preserved by monks copying sources they didn't fully understand. But here's the catch. The manuscript contained specific instructions for use. Such spheres were not to be shown under the imperial eye. They should be buried when the stars turn thrice upon the wolf's shadow. Astronomers matched that cryptic phrase to a triple lunar eclipse cycle used in Druidic calendars, a specific astronomical event that occurred at predictable intervals.
I think that it's a survey object.
The instruction eerily mirrors how actual dodecahedra are found today, intact, underground, often near structures aligned with celestial events. Basically, this manuscript preserved fragments of oral traditions that Rome tried desperately to erase. The stone sleepers referred to the dead, the whispering ones of the forest to druids and their spiritual successors. The dodecahedron was a communication device between worlds, and Rome wanted every trace destroyed because it represented a spiritual tradition they could never control. The pattern they didn't want you to see. Once scientists examined geographic distribution rather than function, a disturbing pattern emerged, one that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Dodecahedra appear almost exclusively along Rome's western frontier. Britain, Gaul, Germania, regions that appeared culturally Roman on the surface, but remained spiritually Celtic beneath. This distribution mirrors exactly the territories where Rome struggled most violently to erase indigenous traditions. What most people don't realize is the specific locations where these objects keep turning up: burial sites, river crossings, settlement boundaries, the edges of things. In Celtic belief systems, these were liminal places, thresholds between worlds. Rivers marked borders between living and dead. Settlement edges separated the known from the unknown, civilization from wilderness, the realm of the living from whatever waited beyond. These aren't places where Romans casually dropped tools. These are places where rituals happened, where boundaries could be crossed, where the living might touch the dead. And get this, several specimens show absolutely no signs of handling. Edges aren't worn smooth, holes aren't polished from use. Interior surfaces remain pristine. They weren't everyday objects passed from hand to hand. They were brought out briefly, used for specific sacred moments at specific sacred times, then hidden away until the next ritual, or buried forever with the dead they were meant to serve. Roman law criminalized unauthorized divination with extreme penalties. The Lex Cornelia imposed death for practicing magic and unsanctioned religious activity. Objects associated with forbidden spiritual practices wouldn't be cataloged in official records or displayed in Roman homes. They would be suppressed, confiscated by authorities, destroyed when possible, or buried secretly where no Roman official would ever find them. The silence that continues. Here's something that should disturb you. Despite 130 discoveries spanning 2 centuries, no major academic institution has ever funded a dedicated dodecahedron research project, not one. In 200 years, the British Museum didn't put a single specimen on public display until 2014. They had multiple dodecahedra sitting in storage for decades, hidden from view, unstudied, unexplained. A leaked 2022 Zuppumferenz transcript revealed the uncomfortable truth among researchers who study Roman artifacts. One senior speaker called the dodecahedron a career killer. Too fringe to get funding, too weird to publish in respected journals, too dangerous for academic reputation. Another admitted that grant applications even mentioning dodecahedra got shuffled to the bottom of review piles, denied with vague concerns about methodology or scope. It's not that simple, though. This object wasn't ignored for 2 centuries because it was unimportant. It was ignored because it threatens everything we think we know about ancient Europe. It suggests that Rome didn't civilize backward barbarians who had nothing worth preserving. It suggests that Rome encountered sophisticated, spiritual traditions with deep astronomical knowledge and systematically erased them from history. It suggests our entire understanding of European civilization might be built on foundations of deliberate, violent forgetting. So, here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If Rome erased this object from every record, every relief, every official document, what else did they bury? What other traditions did they suppress so completely, so thoroughly, that we don't even know to look for them anymore? And what happens when we finally dig it all up? Let me know in the comments. Do you think the dodecahedron was built to communicate with the dead? A ritual calendar for tracking celestial events? Or something we haven't even guessed yet? Smash that like button if you want more forbidden archaeology. Subscribe now so you don't miss what we uncover next. Because there's more buried out there, more secrets, more erased traditions, more forbidden knowledge, and someone still doesn't want us to find it.